Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help. Thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Julie Barrett. For a too brief time, Julie Barrett was the hostess of my third show producer Steve and I had, Mill Creek View, Florida. But she got so busy with her 501c4, Conservative Ladies of Washington Now America, she couldn't put it and afford the time. But just like me, we took a Washington-based hometown newspaper and made into a fastest growing conservative news outlet in America by going from MCV to Heartland Journal Today. Julie took her Washington State advocacy group, CLW, to Conservative Ladies of America, serving much more area. CLW emboldens women to speak up for freedom, our God-given rights, our families, and our country without apology. The conservative sisterhood, she calls it, and it's not a sewing circle. They believe in God-given rights and the U.S. Constitution. They value their freedom and love our country and believe in teaching our young people to honor and love her as well. We respect each individual's rights to their own opinion and beliefs, and they seek to educate others through facts. We believe we are stronger as a community, seeking to protect our freedoms and families together, her website says. Also, like me, she had to get out of the Pacific Northwest and Seattle in particular for sanity to make a bigger impact and also improve her odds of being heard, while with all the cancel culture and medical tyranny and evil that they threw at us. Conservative Ladies of America was created in November 2019 after the founder, Julie Barrett, our guest, had grown tired of being kicked out of neighborhood Facebook groups, constantly being called names and insulted for having an opinion that went against the leftist groupthink. Julie was born and raised in the Seattle area, is a wife, mother of 4, plus a bonus son. She was a single mom for 10 years and formerly owned a boutique gym and spent many years as a bodybuilder. Never particularly political, Julie realized that it was time to stand up and speak up during the 2016 presidential election. Bringing her political passions together with her professional expertise in digital marketing and communications, Conservative Ladies of America was born. Julie is passionate about defending traditional American values, protecting and defending parental rights from experience, restoring her public education system, supporting small business, protecting the unborn, and our Second Amendment. This is a particularly personal show for me, as everything will hit home as to why she moved to Florida about the same time I moved to Tennessee, red states, as far from King County, Washington as we could afford. And it's just gotten worse since. Let's do this. Hello, how are you today?
Hey, Steve, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. You're in Florida, right?
Yes, I am.
All right, that's the whole point of the conversation, is you are not behind the emerald curtain anymore.
That's right.
All right, so in my intro, I said that your story is near and dear to my heart since it mirrors so closely what me and my family went through. Tell us what activated you in the beginning to get into conservative lady politics.
Well, I never really paid attention to politics or government or any of that until Donald Trump came on the scene in 2015. I was actually in Spokane working at a bodybuilding competition when he did a conference in Spokane. It was spring of 2015. So just right after he had announced, and as you can imagine, there were all kinds of protesters out with their signs because it's still Washington, even though it was 2015 and Spokane was still pretty red. The left came out in full force, and I was familiar with. I never really watched The Apprentice, but I was familiar with the show, and just Trump has just been a public figure for so long that everybody knows who he is and his reputation. And so I was intrigued by that and watched his campaign.
And for
When
those
he
of you who
started
don't
talk,
know, from the other 49 states, Spokane is on the far eastern side of Washington, whereas most of the liberal wackiness happens on the far west of the state. And then there's the farmers in the middle that are obviously tug of war. So just so you get perspective, Julie is from the conservative east, whereas the west is what we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about because
oh,
what
I'm
happens in
I'm
Seattle
from the
spreads to Seattle.
West.
You are from the west, but you
I'm
were in
from the
Spokane at the
West.
time. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, in fact, I lived not far from Mill Creek,
Oh,
actually.
well, there you go. But
Yeah.
Spokane, you mentioned, is on the east.
I was there doing a bodybuilding competition. I wasn't actually competing in that competition, but I was working for a supplement company over there, and Trump happened to be at the same conference center when we were there. And so that kind of like just seeing all the outrage that was on the streets and around the hotel just kind of piqued my curiosity. So I started following loosely the campaign, and I heard him talking about the fake news and draining the swamp. And I was a single mom of four children, so I had my hands very full. I wasn't paying attention to a lot of things beyond my kids and just making sure our needs were met. So I had no idea there was a swamp in the government.
That's
And so I
right.
was like, what's he talking about? What is this swamp? And so that's kind of how I got interested in it and really started paying attention and speaking out, because right shortly, it might have been around the same time that Obama's bathroom order came out that allowed men to use women's bathrooms.
Mm,
And I had, my youngest were 9 at the time and girls. And so, I'd let them go to the bathroom in Target by themselves. And then that order came out. And so we weren't going to shop at Target anymore. So it was these kinds of policies that I talk about in local Facebook groups, the Bothell Facebook group, the Mill Creek, community Facebook group. And I ended up getting kicked out of every single group. And one day I had a friend come and ask, where do you meet conservative people, lady friends? And it was really at my church for the most part. And I thought, well, I'll create a Facebook group where I can bring all these different ladies together. They can talk and they can meet and they won't get kicked out for their opinions. And that was the end of 2019. And just a few months later, we had the COVID stuff starting and then George Floyd. And the group grew to thousands very quickly. And then in 2021, we ran into a situation with Seattle Children's Hospital, allowing our daughter to make medical decisions, living decisions for herself at the age of 14 without our consent. They then sent her to a homeless shelter. And as you know, Steve, that's a very long story in itself. But it was through all of that experience that I connected with State Representative Brad Klippert. He's no longer in the legislature, but he and I became close friends, and he saw that I had this audience and asked if I could put out calls to action to this group and have them sign in on bills. And this also started me going down rabbit holes trying to figure out how are these laws made that allowed the hospital to make these decisions, let my child make these decisions during a crisis, no less,
yeah.
without my consent.
Little did you
And
know that that swamp that you heard about in DC actually originated in Seattle.
oh, yeah, I mean, you think about the DC swamp, and it's the swamp in Olympia is so bad. And I think most people, this was me. I had no idea. I had no idea what kind of laws that they were making until, we confronted them as a family, and it changed our lives forever.
Yeah,
And
they
so,
banked on that, and so we'll get into that in the
yeah.
bulk of our time. But how are your kids now, and how do they like Florida as a change of scenery?
Well, interestingly, we thought we would have the twins with us. They're the youngest. They're now 19, and we moved a couple years ago. So we thought they would finish high school down here. Neither of them actually ended up coming. One of them went to a Teen Challenge program, which is a Christian kind of recovery program for girls. She went there in 2023, and that was really an amazing program for her. If you have children that need residential help for mental health crisis or addiction treatment, I highly recommend the Teen Challenge programs, and they're across the country. And she now lives in Utah and is getting her certified nursing assistant
Great.
certification. So that's pretty cool. And then our other daughter, the other twin, decided not to move with us. She was 16, I'm trying to, how old is she now? 19. So she would have been 16, almost 17. And in the state of Washington, you can't make them go. You can't, if a child chooses to live in a youth shelter or something like that, they can do that. And
Exactly
so,
what you were protesting against. I mean,
exactly what I was protesting against. But,
I got wind of you when you got kicked off of those podcast or that Facebook group and whatnot. That's how I heard of your story, and so that's how you get invited to be the host of the Mill Creek View because you're the outsider that we really
right.
loved. So you grew up in Seattle. Had you noticed changes as you grew up, or did COVID 2021 really spiral out of control, or did you open your eyes with elections like Dino Rossi getting stolen around 2004,
Yeah.
over 20 years ago now?
Yeah. Well, I was a young mom in 1996, a young single mom living in Fremont. And so for your Washington audience that lives in Western Washington, they know that Fremont is quirky, weird. That's just how Fremont has
They
really
have a
always
Lenin
been.
statue there. The teachers
Right,
live there.
right.
Yeah.
And they would have they had their Pride parade every June, and you'd have the naked people every June, and it was just something you knew.
Naked on bikes. Don't forget.
Oh yes, naked on bikes.
Even uglier. Yeah.
And we lived right by there, so I was very familiar with it, but it was kind of the weird was kind of contained to the quirky neighborhoods in Seattle. And that weird just it's like over the last decade, maybe even 2 decades, it's just like weird on steroids,
Yeah.
right? That's
They went
gone
from
completely Sodom and
Bohemian
Gomorrah.
to Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, that little bit of quirky Berkeley, Telegraph Avenue like until it went to Haight-Ashbury on Halloween every day.
Right. Right. Like those naked bike riders in the Fremont parade have now become your Seattle City Council members, right? I mean,
Well, it's funny you say that because the lobby for bikes and all the bike lanes that they went crazy and spent billions on, they literally went pro and got into city council. So either they're naked or they're just pro bike or both. Yeah, that's what you got.
right.
So having kids in school had to be a great eye opener. COVID had them trapped at home on school issued tablets from the hometown global company Microsoft without parent filters. Did you see the sex ed stuff they were learning in there like I did about a decade before the rest of the country kind of figured out there was a problem here?
Yeah, I was kind of following the referendum 90 stuff, which was in 2020, they were trying to repeal the comprehensive sex ed bill that had passed in that session. And that was kind of the first time I realized just how bad the sex ed was. I mean, we're not talking about just, you know, birds and the bees stuff. We are really getting into like really age inappropriate sexuality stuff that children should.
Masturbation, bisexual
Yeah.
relationships, anything you can think of, all the perverted pre-Planned Parenthood customer stuff you'd ever want for
Yep.
kindergartners.
Yep. So that's kind of, when I started becoming aware of it. What I saw most on the uh, curriculum was the what Washington calls ethnic studies, and it's more of that strategic branding by the left. Ethnic studies sounds, you know, non-threatening, right? That's not an issue. Everybody wants to study
Yeah.
ethnicity.
Western
Um,
Civ or yeah,
yeah, but they were being taught things like the wheel of power and privilege and,
exactly.
uh, intersectionality, where the more intersectional you were, kind of the more marginalized you would be. But they've made it so you want to have all these intersectionalities because in Washington you get favored for that, right?
I just want to
So
point out
that
that these
was,
were the mustard seeds that blew up to what we see at Harvard with DEI and what we see
yep,
in big corporations and et cetera. This is present at the creation of all the, I'll just call it evil, that we are living through nationwide. So even
yep,
folks like you and me, I'm in Tennessee, you're in Florida, to get away from it, you can't. It all came out of the Pacific Northwest.
right,
So in
right,
California, the then San Francisco supervisor Scott Wiener, now state senator, if you can believe it, advocating for this X-rated stuff and laws he says are for minors' protection, but really putting them at great risk. In Seattle, we had Bob Ferguson as AG, now governor, and Chris Reichdahl, school supervisor, still there. People still don't believe me when I tell them about these guys and their laws. Marco Elias, Washington
right.
Senate, is another sick man, just like Wiener. Tell us about your adventures with legislature. Marco is also a lifelong Washingtonian.
Yeah, he's actually in the 21st Legislative District, which is Mukilteo, Snohomish County. He's actually the legislator in my parents' district there. And it's interesting because that's where I grew up. My parents still live in my childhood home, and it wasn't like that then. It was farm country. We were kind of the rural area, about a half hour north of Seattle. And now it's been all, homes, massive homes have been built and stuff. And you've got this big infiltration by these radical leftists like Marco Leus. And really, he's, as you said, he's really the leader in some of these policies for advancing, I'll just say queer theory, right? Across using that as kind of the big umbrella as, education and so-called gender affirming care. Uh, I, Go back to what your specific question, um, what, as far as his policies, is that what you're asking on
No,
legislation with him?
when you activated and started getting into this, like you said, you weren't very political before, you had to deal with these people. And so you had
Right,
to navigate your conservative values, I'm going to say, which is why the name of your advocacy group is Conservative Ladies of Formerly Washington, Now America, bigger
right,
pool of fish in. You had to deal with these folks. What were your
right.
adventures like dealing with them? Because they didn't like you. They pushed back, they canceled you, they yelled at you, I mean, they would have spit on you if it was today at Antifa land. Tell us about just dealing with Olympia and these same people grew up same place as you with
Yeah.
their were very sick ideas that are now law of the land.
Well, it's interesting because I don't talk about it publicly, but it's an important piece that a lot of people don't understand. In 2023, he was the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 5599, which I call it state sanctioned kidnapping because it allows children of no minimum age to seek housing for abortion or gender affirming care and seek the services. And he was the prime sponsor of this bill. And we are still in Washington. I testified on this bill every step of the way. I've coined them Trantifa from way back in 2023. I would get threats. I'm testifying online. I would get threats via email. There would be threats online. There would be threats to my kids. And then when I would testify, it was in a Senate committee, and I was testifying online, and it was either right before me or right after me. There was a trans person that went in person and was speaking. I couldn't tell if they were dressed up as a furry or what. I clipped the video back then, but this person goes on for 5 minutes. And the chair of the committee allowed this person to go on for 5 minutes. And while this person was going on, they were calling me all sorts of names, this radical right winger, anti-trans, just going off. And you can't do that when you testify. If I were to do that, I would get cut off. The chair would cut me off, reprimand me, and tell me to stay on topic.
Right. Decorum would say no personal attacks, but this person was
Exactly.
making nothing but personal attacks.
And yeah, and the chair let it go on. And I actually liked this senator. It was Christine Rolfus, and she's not a senator anymore. But I emailed her right after that, and I said, I demand an apology from you. That was completely uncalled for. That you allowed this person to just go on and on and on. And the person started, like, the way she got cut off. I think it was a female, but the way she got cut off was she started like standing up and screaming and stuff. And finally, the chair cut her off and called security. But these are the kinds of things, if you put yourself out there and you're speaking common sense, right? You're speaking to protect children. You get the Trantifa army coming after you because they want to threaten you. They want to scare you. And I don't know if you're aware, but after that bill was passed, or right before the final passage, we held a rally. Wait, I call it a protest. We held a protest in Olympia. And the trans people held a counter protest on the steps across the courtyard from us. And so they bring, their umbrella, mafia, their rainbow mafia umbrellas and stuff, and they've got their blowhorns. And while we were having our protest, the entire Democrat caucus from the House and the Senate, they all marched out in a line and went over and joined the counter protest. And they spoke. Marco spoke, Lori Jenkins, who's the lesbian Speaker of the House. All of these people were speaking and rallying with them. And they bust these people in, as we know that they do. But
Not in the shadows anymore.
no. And I mean that wasn't this wasn't a factor in our leaving, but I knew that my personal safety was, a factor in my activism in Washington.
Yeah.
And so getting out was, part to protect me and my family as well. Because I'm not gonna let them do this and not.
No, you're a concerned parent just like me. We're not,
Yeah.
we're not afraid. We just realize like if you're going to keep going, you can't be a target. And the schools, Julie, they're so bad. So this guy, Brendan Ham, the pronoun queen, he destroyed my kids' summer swim league in your former neighborhood. They were private clubs that bought into this pronoun gender stuff. His pool had four transgender kids, for example, which is statistically impossible. On LinkedIn, you can see he's a coach there. One owner was willing to take down all the boys and girls past records to start over with gender neutral times. That was a 100-year-old club where the kids' grandmothers swam. That's the thing, Julie. Tell me this. I had a hard time getting adults to vote conservative. In Washington, only 23% of Christians even register to vote, much less turn out to vote. Some races were so close, just 1 to 5%, they'd have a Republican majority if they did, just a
Right.
few more. But nope, they were into it and had no stomach for any fights. How do you find the moms that are willing to fight?
Ugh, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Trillion.
Um, when we first started the Facebook group and COVID happened and everybody was stuck at home and businesses were shut down, the women in the group were just craving um, socialization and connection with others. And so we started finding ways to bring ladies together. And so I say we had our wine and cheese parties. And so we'd go into someone's home and 40 women would come and everyone would bring stuff and we would talk and connect. You'd make friends, but it was always important to me that we would like circle up and talk about a specific issue and what we could do about it, right? Not just, venting and bitching and complaining about things, but what can we do to move the needle? And this was before even everything happened with my daughter and I got into legislation. Um, and what I learned is from trying to get people from the wine and cheese party to taking action is very, very difficult. Very difficult. You'll get, a very small percentage of people that will make that transition. I think most people, and I don't experience this the same way in Florida, but what I experienced in Washington was some of the stuff that's happening, I think it's almost too much for them to process. So there's sort of this denial as a way of coping.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I think you're
I
right.
think I would imagine like my husband and I, you and your family probably saw, okay, no matter how hard I fight here, this isn't turning around in my lifetime in
Right.
this state.
Well, I remember
And
very clearly standing up and shouting as loud as I could to big rooms, and they would be like, "Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that," or "No, that can't be possible." I'm like,
right,
"You watch." I would read the legislation. I would tell them about the marketing campaigns. I would show them the proof, P&Ls, the money involved, everything you could possibly imagine. Like, how can I say it to get it through to you? And these were parents with kids my age, 4, 5, 6 years old. They just didn't. I mean,
yeah.
98% of the King County is vaccinated, right? I mean, they just didn't get it. Do you remember Bill Cooper?
Oh yeah, Bill's a good friend.
Yeah, me
Or
too.
Bill's a
So,
friend. We're not like best buddies, but Bill's a friend and we went to church together too.
yes, he's a good friend of mine. I'll say that out loud. But so when I figured out King County was too dangerous for my little girl, we moved next county north from Seattle's King County to Snohomish, that where you were from. That's how I got the newspaper and opened the Snohomish View. more conservative part of the area and could still drive to work in Bellevue pre-COVID, where all the Microsoft people are, when I couldn't go downtown anyway.
Right.
The papers were literally open to give conservative voices Seattle Times would never give to be heard. And I think I still have a Brett Rogers shirt. He was the first Republican in 20 years to even run for prosecuting attorney. He lost. So anyway, I worked with Bill, who was Republican chair, and told him, look, man, the party is toast in Washington. You can't win 51% after a decade of or more of 41% losses. This was 2022, so we hope for some Republican flips with like Scott Stevenson and Dunn
Right.
and Vincent for U.S. Congress against that awful Del Bene, who's still there. So anyway, I moved before November and flew back for the Wake victory party. They all lost, even after COVID, fascism, and everything we went through, schools. But back to Bill, I told him we had to make it the party of parents. Forget republicanism. The brand is gone. If we ever wanted to win again on family values and conservative values and protect the kids, didn't happen. Not to say I'm some Svengali or it would have if he did, but it was a better shot than they had. It's gotten way worse for minors and parents that are still there, unlike you and me who left. What have the parents done to try to protect their kids from doctors and teachers?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's why it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
So they figured out in Olympia, the state capital, for those who don't know, how to widen the net. A bunch of laws aimed at liberating minors from parental consent, like good communists would. Everything from vaccines to transgender surgeries and abortion. Just this week, new laws Bob Ferguson seems excited to sign. What's going on? And did you ever feel a sense of hopelessness that my old state of California, Washington, and Oregon, and I guess now Hawaii are just lost? They're not American states anymore.
Oh, I 100% think that that's the case. And, it like you saw the video that I did um, this weekend. I was in the car waiting for my husband to get done at Harbor Freight. And so I just made a quick video about the mature minor doctrine and how kids can get vaccinated. And I don't know if you read any of the replies, Steve, but so many people were like, no, they can't. You're wrong. I mean, and what do you do? I'm not going to go dig up all the information for you on this, but people really um,
But you
don't
do,
have,
Julie, you do. I've seen you read out loud publicly the actual language of the law, and they just let it go. Whew, won't apply to my
yep,
kids.
yep,
Or they'll say, I'm in private school, so this isn't my problem in public school. Oh, yeah, guess what? They just mandated it. So, no, any school,
right,
it's now age-based, it's not school-based. So, forget your religious exemption, you darn Christians. It's happening.
right. And, what we've seen over the last, year and a half, and especially in the last week with this West Coast Alliance and Washington really expediting their framework to be able to, mandate vaccines or whatever else they want. Um, the people that are like, oh, this isn't legal, this is unconstitutional, Harmeet Dillon's coming and SCOTUS and DOJ and like, have you looked at the laws that Washington passes? Maybe a very small fraction of them are actually constitutional. So if you think saying this is unconstitutional is going to make anyone in Washington government bat an eye,
Yeah, they did away with it a long time ago. They even did away with their own state
yeah,
constitution by passing an asset tax, which is really an income tax. And it literally says in the Constitution, you can't have an income tax. Okay, well, guess what? We'll just call it another name. We'll call it
right,
DEI or DAE. So when I first moved there, I was there 20 years. Uh, it was a backwater. News was irrelevant. All they cared about was salmon, fishing right-of-ways, and maybe that the roads had some potholes. Like it, you didn't hear about this in DC, and I think they hid behind that to get a lot of this most radical in the nation stuff going. That's why I always say, don't Washington, you're Tennessee, and they're always like, you mean
right,
DC? No, I mean the state of. So Oregon invented the puberty blockers. Oregon began covering the cost of puberty suppression for transgender people on Medicaid in January 2015. Lots of destroyed reproductive systems in those 10 years. I honestly thought someone like Chloe Cole would sue Kaiser out of existence by now and the dominoes would fall to Seattle Children's Hospital, but nope, they still do it, even with Trump in the White House. Oregon wrote 3,664 prescriptions last year to a total of 536 children. I
Wow.
saw Florida said they do away with childhood vax schedule. I guess not as a mandate, but as a option. I don't know. You tell us. But how different is Florida from Oregon and Washington in healthcare for what they call transgender affirming care? I just call it child abuse.
Yeah, I do too. Well, it's banned here, and that's been, in recent years under the DeSantis administration and through the legislature, they have passed numerous different bills not allowing that, and bills that require medical professionals, mental health care professionals, and for a variety of different things that mandate that they seek parental consent before giving kids Tylenol at school, just a wide array of things. And that's one of the things, Steve, that is in Washington laws is permission by omission, right? People say, well, it doesn't say in the bill that they can do it without parental consent. No, but does it say in the bill that they have to have parental consent to do it? No, it doesn't. So there you go. They omit the parent altogether, and that leaves it wide open. And that's, I think, what people don't understand. And last week, Governor DeSantis said there would not be any vaccine mandates in the state of Florida, basically saying you get to choose. You get to choose for yourself. You get to choose for your children. There's no saying that you can't have the vaccine, but we're not. One of his things I heard, he did a press conference yesterday, and he said, if your child needs a surgery and they're denied that surgery because they didn't get the COVID vaccine, that's wrong. And those are the things that we were seeing around the country is that if you didn't have the COVID shot, you couldn't get surgery or you couldn't get other types of care. And so this new, what they're doing in Florida, doesn't allow for people to discriminate based on your vaccine status. And they created a new Maha Florida Commission that will be led by First Lady Casey DeSantis and Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins.
Who I saw
So I
retweeted you, by
think,
the way. So congratulations, you got noticed. That's
thank you. I
fantastic.
know that was, I was so giddy. My husband, it was Sunday that happened, and my husband was playing on the worship team on Sunday. And so he got home a few hours after I did on Sunday, and I met him at the garage. I'm like, oh my gosh, the First Lady retweeted me.
And that is the party of parents versus the state being your parent in Washington,
Right.
Oregon, California, Hawaii now, and I guess New York City and some other places, or New York State. So by the way, Oregon prescribed 613% more per capita than California. And don't forget, they consistently rank first among US states and territories for the number of registered sex offenders on a per capita basis. So we're dealing with people right out of the gate who aren't on the same page as us. It's a short drive from Portland to Seattle. I used to do it because Washington had no income tax, but Oregon has no sales tax, so TVs and computers tax free. And when gas was cheap, that was okay. So anyway, University of Oregon, Evergreen, UW, the Spine campus. So many teachers are Antifa and busted for
Yeah.
sexual assault on minors. What's in the water out there?
Oh, that's a good question. I think they're drinking out of Satan's swamp or something.
Well, Gig Harbor
Um,
has witches, a very dark place.
yeah, and Todd Herman, who used to do radio in Seattle and now has his own podcast, he often, because he's been covering the trans stuff since like 2012, he was very early on that. There was a like Satanists at the Capitol in Olympia doing some kind of like weird sacrifices or something on the Capitol steps when like some of these first transgender things started passing early in the 2010s. I really do think that the whole West Coast has just this very evil, dark cloud over it. And
Demonic infiltration.
yeah, and you
I mean,
mentioned
just thinking,
earlier,
whoever could think of the words to put into legislation and then get a majority to vote for, there must be demonic inspiration. It's
absolutely.
not, it's, you and I wouldn't come up with this on our own, just saying, like, what can we do to screw over the kids? We wouldn't come up with that. We'd say, oh, let's give them a banana instead of a lollipop. They're coming up with ways that they can get abortions at age 11
Right, right.
and pay for
And
it.
and where is the church, Steve?
Well, like I said, 23%, I guess, at last count, even register. So there's 74% of them sitting there saying it's somebody else's problem. My kid's in
Right.
Catholic school, my kid's in Christian school. It's not our problem. It's those poor Jews and Gentiles over there that have to worry about it. Well,
Right.
unfortunately, not true. Who was your biggest nemesis when you lobbied the legislatures? I know you still do it from where you are now, even in Washington, so you still care. I've kind of given up. Who helped you the most and who stood in your way?
Um, really great question. You want me to just go unleashed on this?
Your call, sister.
So I only testified once this year, and I'll tell you why. But I've stopped testifying. I do, and I our whole team has kind of, because it was this last session was very hard on our team that would go in and testify. They really felt this evil presence when they would testify because we're testifying on, some of the garbage that's happening in the schools and stuff that impacts kids and the abortion issues and things like that. And it was just really heavy for them. And so I think we probably won't be have anybody on our team testifying next session. And we don't really have any allies in the state legislature anymore. We had, Brad Clippert was a dear friend of mine, and he was always, supportive, and he would ask me to testify, and he would, help me learn how to decipher bills and things like that. Jim Walsh and I, before he became chair, he and I were worked very closely together. I think as the chair, he's had to do that political, politicianing stuff, playing politics, I call it.
In a minority
And so I
party, in
think,
a uber minority party. Yep.
yeah. And so he's had to kind of walk the line with, some of the rhinos and sort of be everybody's friend in that. And I call out the rhinos. I call out people, Republicans, when they're voting along with Democrats on these bad policies. I would say, obviously the Democrats are going to be against us. But what I wasn't anticipating when I first got involved was that that the Republicans would actually be more of a roadblock for us trying to advocate against these policies than even the Democrats. And I will say,
They had a caucus named Mainstream Republicans of Washington, which is literally rhinos of Washington. Like you can't
yeah,
be any more clear. And so there are no Republicans in maybe two.
right, right. And Jim Walsh, to Jim Walsh's credit, when as far as voting on
He's one of
legislation,
them.
he is like the only he's really dependable as far as being a conservative vote in the legislature. So I'll give him that. He still does that. But
But what about
the
all these
bill,
big money NGOs? They're the ones I was
what?
actually trying to allude to. The big money NGOs, the ones that are
Oh yeah.
not even elected officials that'll be there to knock you down or put an umbrella in your face. Who were they in your way?
Um, I wouldn't say any of those folks. Well, I mean the teachers union. So we got on the radar of all of the teachers unions, all of the leftist education people. They would actually like quote our emails and our calls to action that would go out, and they would be like, we have to get more sign-ins than the conservative ladies of Washington gets on such and such bill. Senator Lisa Wellman, she's the chair of the education committee, she was directing all these people.
Yep.
When she would see us load the sign in with opposition, she'd ask them, set a goal of, and which I am like, okay, game on. Let's, like, I'm so
Julie
competitive.
plus
I'm like,
one. Yeah,
let's do
Julie
this.
plus one. That's like it used to be Merrill Lynch plus one was Morgan Stanley's motto. So Julie plus one. Anything she does,
Yeah.
we have to do. And by the way, it's the same one that blocks Jonathan Cho and Brandy Cruz, the bravest people from Andy No. And Dave, he actually had to flee to the UK, which is worse there. Katie Davis Court to you, people like you, all came out of Northwest citizen journalism and citizen activists like Andrea Suarez of We Heart Seattle, who literally picks up garbage the city won't go near in homeless camps, but yet she's public enemy number one. They
Right.
all get blocked by government. And of course, they stripped away the election of sheriff, the only county in the country you can't support your local sheriff by vote, King County, where Seattle is, yet they keep voting for these people. What is it going to take for Washington to vote conservative? Or do you think the voting system is just so rigged that even if they wanted to, they can't do anything about it?
Um, I do think that they could do something about it if they wanted to. I think if there was the kind of leadership, um, and I don't mean just leadership in one person, but you had like a whole slate of leaders on the conservative side in Washington that could really put in a system to get people out to vote. I think if you did like landslide voting, like what we saw in the presidential election of 2016, I think then possibly, but people are so disenfranchised with the elections in Washington, and I totally get it because when I first voted was in 2004 with Dino Rossi, and that was we're just going to count the ballots in that governor's race until we get the outcome we want. And then I didn't vote again until 2016. So I get it, but truly, Steve, I don't think there is. I think Washington's going to have to burn down
Hmm.
and be rebuilt. I truly believe that.
A great reset. So the five largest ethnic groups in Seattle are white, let's call it 60%, Asian, 17%, Black or African American, 6.5%. So it's not a race thing. They actually use MLK on the logo for King County, but it wasn't named for ML King. It was Vice President Rufus King, who died on election night drunk in a ditch. He froze to death. It's gender politics from Patty Murray, Abortion for All, and MIA, Maria Cantwell, the two senators. They've been there 60 years combined, and judges that didn't graduate high school. And if they did, it was like an evergreen woke gentleman C type of school. Is that the deal? They just don't have good leaders that care about citizens corrupt like we've never seen before?
Yeah. Well, and on the right too, I just don't think, I don't know. Sometimes I think, okay, what if the Republicans did, get into a majority position in Washington, whether that's on a state legislature or King County or wherever that may be? Would they know what to do with that power? Do they have a plan with what they would do if they were in the majority? I don't
Right.
think they do. I
Like the
don't know
dog
that they would.
catching the car finally is like, now what? I can't eat it. Yeah.
Right. I think they would. I think they'd be like, oh, shoot, what do we do
If
now?
they still exist, they probably would enjoy the minority and not being able to do anything, than to actually have to take responsibility for doing something that they probably
Right.
already know they can't. It's so ingrained, it's illegal. They'd have to have a constitutional reconstruction. Have you had more success making headway with Ladies for America versus Washington only?
Yes. So one of the things we wanted to do with Conservative Ladies of America is as we had our people leaving Washington, going to Florida, Tennessee, Texas, wherever they might land, Idaho, a lot of Washington people go over to Idaho, was to keep them engaged wherever they ended up going so that they could fight to hold the line in a conservative state, help build that red state firewall, because that's what we need to do, right? In these red states, we need to make sure that they're putting policies into place to not allow the things that have happened in places like Washington.
Yep, that's
Um,
exactly the pivot that I did. Heartland Journal became Mill Creek View, little corner of the world, and you did the
yep,
same thing, little corner of Washington, politically devoid of anything conservative, and decided to take on the whole country to remind them, to be the Paul Revere, that if you don't pay attention and engage and hold the line, you're going to end up just like Seattle, because Seattle was
yep,
conservative like 25 years ago. Tennessee 12 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. So, and Florida, this is the first time in the history of the whole darn state that they've had two senators and a governor Republican. This is a new phenomenon, not to mention all the people moving in there from all over the
right.
place. Um, and yeah, it's really shocking once you're out from behind the Emerald Curtain, I call it, that the America really is normal.
Yeah.
It is like a biodome. I think their leaders have a fetish and they're deviant. They all need like investigators to see what they do at night. I mean, they ran on democracy or hating Trump, but they really just want access to our kids. Do you see any leaders in the shadows in Washington that might turn things around? You said Walsh, Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank, maybe. Anybody?
Oh, Keith is amazing. Keith is a friend and he's really strong. And I don't know if you knew this, but the mainstreamers really went hard against Keith.
The
There,
mainstreamers, of course, yeah.
he calls them never swankers.
Yeah. I mean, they sure did a number on Snohomish Sheriff Fortney. They tried to recall him
Right.
4 times, and then they ran him out of town in an election of a woke woman, now
But that
sheriff.
was the left. This was actually the mainstream Republicans do
They
not like
turned
Keith.
they turned on them their own. Okay. That's
Yeah.
typical, right? Isn't it?
Yep.
It's
But
like
now, like he's getting kind of all this exposure as outspoken constitutional sheriff in Washington. So my hope is that that will help get support. The people really support that. And so I'm hoping that the donors and the mainstreamers in Washington will not try to resist him in whatever his future endeavors are, whether that's, running again for sheriff or doing something different. But
still
uh,
shocking to me that they were able to strip it away from the voters in King County and that they have an appointed sheriff who will do
right,
anything that the legislature says. And I guess it really doesn't matter anymore. I mean, the LA sheriff, he just let 450 ICE detainer requests so far this year. It's only September 9th, after that summer of riots. So sheriffs aren't the heroes they once were, like Swank.
right.
Dave Reichert couldn't win against Ferguson, and Dave solved the Green River killer murders. I mean, basically a local hero. They just had uh, they just had cops there,
Yeah.
birthplace of defund the police. So makes sense to everyone but me and you.
Well, and I think a lot of law enforcement in places like Washington have left. I know several officers who have left Washington. When you've got places like Florida that are offering bonuses to officers to come from other states and, work in Florida, when I would imagine as a law enforcement officer, when you go to serve and protect, you want to be upholding the Constitution. You don't want to be, pushed down and forced a leftist agenda. And so it's got to be really appealing to people who that's their passion is law enforcement to come to a place like Florida, which is a law and order state.
In my lifetime in Washington, they used to leave for the higher pay in LA, where I'd come from, and I was there during those riots. And I'm like, okay, it's like hazard pay. You'll get paid more, but you may not make it home. But now they're saying, well, I just want to be able to actually arrest people and not see them on the street 5 minutes later and then arrest them again. And they're back. There was this revolving door in Seattle where you'd
Yep.
arrest them in the morning, they'd be out by lunch, and you'd arrest them again for dinner. They spend the night, come back out. It was like a hotel concierge service, but they were hurting people, selling drugs
Yeah.
and murder sometimes. So as we wrap this all up, there's now something called the West Coast Alliance, Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, New York, I think Michigan, or maybe it was Chicago. I can't remember, but they joined this vaccine alliance, even though RFK Jr. said they are bad and may cause autism and for sure cancer, maybe even colon cancer in kids they've never seen before. But the senators taking pharma money yelled at him. So they went along with it. Patty Murray right up there at the top.
Of course.
Florida, and for now, my Tennessee aren't letting the states do this parenting. What do you think will this open more parents' eyes and get them out of there, like living behind the Berlin Wall in East Germany or something? Or is that even not low enough, making their kids take these injurious?
I think they won't realize it until that next crisis is declared and they're actually living under COVID 2.0.
Oh, well, that they built those housing pens down there for the
Yeah.
unvaccinated, so they want to
Yeah.
use them. I'm sure people don't believe that either, but
Right.
look it up, it's there. So down the line, DeSantis stands on exact opposite of Inslee slash Ferguson: abortion, marijuana, property taxes, spending, immigration, vaccines. I could go on. AI, carbon capture, controversial in the Republican Party, by the way. So he really is what MAGA is, drag shows, crime, you name it.
Yep.
Trump endorsed pro BLM Byron Donalds. What gives? Is MAGA dead like the old Tea Party?
I don't know. I mean, because like you said, like DeSantis is actually carrying out the MAGA agenda.
He's the only one.
And yet you've got Trump, and I don't know if you saw yesterday, the White House put out a video with Florida House Speaker Daniel Perez, who went completely against everything DeSantis was asking from the legislature, medical freedom, Second Amendment stuff. he went against all of that stuff intentionally so that just, to be a roadblock for DeSantis. And I believe Trump is endorsing him for either the CFO or Attorney General. And we've got like right now, we've got like the Freedom Dream Team. We've got DeSantis, Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who's a one-legged retired Green Beret. We've got General James Othmeyer, who I would say is probably the best in the nation right now. And then our new CFO is Blaise Ingoglia, who Blaise and
And your
Jake,
healthcare guy too.
yeah, and our Surgeon General, Joe Ladapo. So we've got like this dream team, and Trump is trying to push the rhinos into Florida. But the thing is that, when I used to live in Washington, I'd see Byron Donalds on Fox News or whatever. I'm like, oh, he sounds really good. He sounds really conservative. But when you actually live here and you see he doesn't do anything, he's all talk. He's kind of one of these like influencers that doesn't really do anything. During a hurricane, he's not even in state or in district. And we see when you live through a hurricane in Florida and your governor is all over the media telling you, what they're doing to prepare and, what you can expect. He's there before the hurricane, during, after. It's
Rebuilding
amazing.
bridges in 24
Oh,
hours. I mean,
amazing.
anything
The
you'd want.
emergency
Yeah.
response here is incredible. The leadership is incredible. And it's like, I think about, okay, what if, let's just say Mount Rainier, because it is a volcano, what if Mount Rainier blew? What would the emergency response be in Washington to that?
Every man and woman and they for themselves.
Can you imagine?
You'd see on Fox News big lines of brake lights all trying to get across 520 Bridge and have to
With
pay the
ash
toll at
all over,
$15,
snowing ash.
$15 round trip. Oh yeah. It'd be like Mount St. Helens only with what do you call them? The segways. So I think it's a civil war, rhinos versus voters like you, even in Florida, the whole
Yeah,
country. DeSantis is more Trump than Trump. Just look at his endorsements. They're terrible.
yeah.
Actually, DeSantis was a founder of the Freedom Caucus, and they didn't endorse the South Carolina Freedom Caucus chair. So that tells you everything you need to know. Florida without DeSantis might look a lot more like Seattle under Inslee, do you think?
Um, I don't think it would be that bad, but I think it would get there. And
The trajectory would certainly be
yes,
like
yes.
pre-DeSantis or pre-Dino Rossi.
Yeah, and if you think about like Rick Scott was the governor before DeSantis, and Rick Scott's kind of a rhino. I mean, he's not nearly as conservative as DeSantis.
Well, Jeb Bush had it longer than that even.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the Bush family is sort of the roots of rhinoism. And
And
do
the
you
GOP here, the Florida GOP is all a bunch of rhinos, and it's all about playing politics to these people. And I believe the difference you have with the leaders in just the DeSantis administration are they really want to be servants of the people. They really want to do right by the people of Florida. And I appreciate that. And I think it's, you really can see the contrast when you've lived under people like Inslee,
yeah,
Gregoire, Ferguson. I never lived under Ferguson as governor,
yeah.
but um,
Inslee
yeah,
was
I
Gregoire with
think
a
it's,
pant with mini shorts, basically the same
yeah,
thing. So James Offmeyer, you mentioned the AG versus Bob, former AG and now governor, in total control. I call him the Weasel. James is the ideal MAGA AG versus a blue
totally.
city. What's your? It's interesting too because the furthest point in the country is from Seattle to Miami. What's your take? Speaker Perez been a big block on Ron, you said, and met with Trump. I don't know why, to basically block Offemeyer's MAGA agenda. A guy named Steele, a state rep, he's sort of the Marco Lias we talked about. Looks like they're co-opting the Tea Party all over again, in my humble
Yep.
opinion. Susie Wiles has moved everything to
Yep.
Florida. Florida is sort of the Mar-a-Lago is the new power center. She's got fingerprints all over the slate that I'm talking about.
Yep.
What do you think, Julie? You think Florida is going to be 2, 3, 4 years from now when he's gone, DeSantis is gone, DeSantis administration is gone, is going to be the Nirvana you were hoping when you left Seattle, or is it going to be more like, because Tennessee's in the exact same boat. We're going to get a new governor in about 11, 12 months from now too, who's been in DC a long time. What are your thoughts? What do you think the future of Tennessee is for you?
Well,
I'm
first of
sorry,
all, I didn't
Florida,
come
Florida,
to,
not Tennessee, Florida.
yeah, first of all, I didn't come here to kick up my heels. I came to fight. And so I expect to fight. I'm here for the fight. Put me in, coach. Where do you, what do you need me to do? I'm here to fight. Um, that said, I think that DeSantis has a plan. And the DeSantis endorsement is going to carry the most weight with the people of Florida. I mean, you see DeSantis is doing press conferences around the state. Like every day, he's doing a press conference with his team or some issue around the state. He is in front of the people every day. And I really just think as much as Florida is also Trump country, we also know that we don't have lower property taxes. We don't have the medical freedom agenda or Florida is not like when you think about 2A rights, it, Washington has open carry, but Florida doesn't.
Interesting.
Um, you know, and the Perez and the legislature roadblocked that for DeSantis, and the people know about it because DeSantis, and this is one of the things I really love about him, he's not afraid to get out there and call a spade a spade. He's not afraid to talk about Joe Gruters, who's the new RNC chairman, his record in the Senate and his bad voting, and he calls him linguini spine Gruters. People need to know that. And so I'm glad that he's not afraid to speak the truth because one of the things I experienced when I started speaking out in Washington, we don't talk about good Republicans. We don't talk about their records. That's a conversation that you have behind closed doors. You ask them why they voted like that behind closed doors. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I mean, that might be what you guys do, but clearly that's not working for us.
Holy smokes. That's why the real estate market is so corrupt too.
Yeah.
Well, do you think Ron and Casey can carry it all the way to the presidency one day, First Lady and President?
I
I
don't
honestly
know. I mean,
believe he's
there's,
the one and only of the 50 governors and 23 Republicans. I honestly believe he's the one and only doing the Freedom Caucus MAGA talk. All the rest of them should be following him,
yeah.
but they're not. So therefore, if he was president, he could actually do something kind of like in the Reagan movie where a governor of California can't do much, but a president, he can do something. Do you think
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis could be president?
I think someday, I don't think yet. I think he's very concerned about Florida. I don't think he wants to leave Florida um, open to the Trump people to come, these rhinos that Trump is endorsing. I think he has a plan, and I think he is part of the future plan in Florida. DeSantis is really young. What is he, early 40s or something?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, does he want to do something like Greg Abbott isn't going for his fourth term, like that type of something? Or does he want to give it to
well, he's
Casey
termed
so
out,
that
so he can't.
right. Well, they could change
But
the laws. They've done it. Bloomberg did
so
it.
here's I have a suspicion. I could be really wrong, but he and Jay Collins have both made Freudian slips in press conferences where Jay Collins calls Ron lieutenant governor and Ron calls Jay governor.
Oh, wouldn't that be interesting? All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. And if it happens, we heard it here first from you, Julie. I want to thank you for your time and really just the balls that you have to keep
Thank you.
fighting, move on. You've been through a lot. We couldn't get into all of it, but it was rough and you're still standing and you're still fighting. Very, very admirable and an inspiration, actually. So we're at the end here. So tell everyone who I'm sure they want to know, tell everyone where they can find out more about you, follow your social media, go to your website. I don't know if you're a 501c3 and want to donate. Tell us. Go for it.
We are a 501(c)(4), so you can donate, but unfortunately, it's not tax deductible because of all of our political advocacy work. We can't be a 501(c)(3). Our website is conservativeladiesofamerica.com. We also have a Substack, which is conservativeladiesofamerica.substack.com. You can find me all over social media on X, which I'm pretty active on, is at Julie C. Barrett. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us, and on YouTube at Conservative
Julie C.
Ladies.
Florida woman, Barrett.
But that's not the handle. But yes,
Yeah.
and that is a joke in response to somebody from Washington who said, you need to stop talking about Washington because you live in Florida now.
Yeah, their dream come true. They'd love it if you stopped, but no way.
They would.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on with us. Hang on, folks. I will be right back.
Thanks for having me.
Sing a song about the heartland.
Thanks for coming back. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. Please pass it around to all your friends who might find this interesting. Even if they don't, there's got to be something in the library that they would like. And we really could use it with the algorithm because they want to censor us on YouTube. But it is how we grow and keep this content free for you. Otherwise, I got to start charging. Just kidding. Now, the Heartland Journal News. Be sure to check out 3 in 3, my new Friday news recap show with stories you won't hear anywhere else. I may stop doing this segment, but for now, here's HLJ news that I find interesting and you should know. That's on Play TV, by the way. So you may have to download a new app, but it's worth it. It's a former Parler, and it's their video app that competes with YouTube and Rumble, and it's pretty good. Zuckerberg's AI hires disrupt Meta with swift exits and threats to leave. Longtime acolytes are sidelined as big tech chief directs biggest leadership reorganization in 2 decades. Hannah Murray, Christina Criddle, and George Hammond took 3 people to write this in San Francisco. Another long-suffering city I used to call home, by the way. This was August 29, 2025, and this was in the Financial Times. You may have missed it. Within days of joining Meta, Xingji Zhao, co-creator of OpenAI's ChatGPT, had threatened to quit and return to his former employer in a blow to Mark Zuckerberg's multi-billion-dollar push to build personal superintelligence. Zhao went as far as to sign employment paperwork to go back to OpenAI. Shortly afterwards, according to 4 people familiar with the matter, he was given the title of Meta's new chief AI scientist. The incident underscores Zuckerberg's turbulent effort to direct the most dramatic reorganization of Meta's senior leadership in the group's 20-year history. One of the few remaining big tech founder CEOs, Zuckerberg has relied on longtime accolades such as Chief Product Officer Chris Cox to head up his favored department and build out his upper ranks. But in the battle to dominate AI, the billionaire is shifting toward a new and recently hired generation of executives, including Zhao, former Scale AI CEO Alexander Wang, and former GitHub chief Nat Friedman. Current staff are adapting to the reinvention of Meta's AI efforts as the newcomers seek to flex their power while adjusting to the idiosyncrasies of working within a sprawling $1.95 trillion giant with a hands-on chief executive. There's a lot of big men on campus, said one investor who is close with some of Meta's new AI leaders. Adding to the tumult, a handful of new AI staff have already decided to leave after brief tenures, according to people familiar with the matter. This includes Ethan Knight, a machine learning scientist who joined the company weeks ago. Another, Avi Verma, a former OpenAI researcher, went through Meta's onboarding process but never showed up for his first day, according to a person familiar with the matter. In a tweet on X on Wednesday, Rishaba Agarwal, a research scientist who started at Meta in April, announced his departure. He said that while Zuckerberg and Wang's pitch was incredibly compelling, he felt the pull to take on a different kind of risk without giving more details. Meanwhile, Chaya Nayak and Loredana Krisen, generative AI staffers who had worked at Meta for 9 and 10 years respectively, are among the more than half a dozen veteran employees to announce they are leaving in recent days. Wired first reported some details of recent exits, including Zhao's threatened departure. Meta said, "We appreciate that there's outsized interest in seemingly every minute detail of our AI efforts, no matter how inconsequential or mundane, but we're just focused on doing the work to deliver personal superintelligence." A spokesman said Zhao had been scientific lead of the Meta superintelligence effort from the outset, and the company had waited until the team was in place before formalizing his chief scientist title. Some attrition is normal for any organization of this size. Most of these employees have been with the company for years, and we wish them the best, they added. Over the summer, Zuckerberg went on a hiring spree to coax AI researchers from rivals such as OpenAI and Apple with the promise of 9-figure sign-on bonuses and access to vast computing resources in a bid to catch up with rival labs. This month, Meta announced it was restructuring its AI group, recently renamed Meta Superintelligence Labs, MSL, into 4 distinct teams. It is the 4th overhaul of its AI efforts in 6 months. One more reorg and everything will be fixed, joked Meta research scientist Mimamsa Jaiswal on X last week. Just one more. Overseeing all of Meta's AI efforts is Wang, a well-connected and commercially minded Silicon Valley entrepreneur who was poached by Zuckerberg as part of a $14 billion investment in his scale data labeling group. The 28-year-old is heading Zuckerberg's most secretive new department known as TBD, shorthand for to be determined, which is filled with marquee hires. In one of the new team's first moves, Meta is no longer actively working on releasing its flagship Llama Behemoth model to the public after it failed to perform as hoped, according to people familiar with the matter. Instead, TBD is focused on building newer cutting-edge models. Multiple company insiders describe Zuckerberg as deeply invested and involved in the TBD team, while others criticize him for micromanaging. Wang and Zuckerberg have struggled to align on a timeline to achieve the chief executive's goal and reaching superintelligence, or AI that surpasses human capabilities, according to another person familiar with the matter. The person said Zuckerberg has urged the team to move faster. Meta said this allegation was manufactured tension without basis. In fact, that's clearly being pushed by dramatic navel-gazing busybodies. Quick side note, the rise of Alexander Wang, Meta's $14 billion bet on 28-year-old scale AI chief. Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg spends big to hire well-connected entrepreneur to revitalize artificial intelligence ambitions. Mark Zuckerberg is betting more than $14 billion that a well-connected 28-year-old is the catalyst his company needs to catch up with rivals racing to develop and commercialize artificial intelligence. The Meta chief struck a deal last week to buy 49% of data labeling business Scale AI and hire its leader, Alexander Wang. Zuckerberg paid $14.3 billion, marginally ahead of Scale's last valuation, but ownership of the startup is basically incidental, according to one Scale investor. The real prize was Wang. An executive at one of Meta's biggest rivals said the move came after Zuckerberg decided Wang was the wartime CEO he needed at the center of the big tech group's superintelligence lab at a time when Meta was falling behind its AI rivals. A math prodigy and the child of two Chinese scientists, Wang, who co-founded Scale age 19, is neither a celebrated AI researcher nor a top engineer. According to a dozen people who have worked with and for Wang or invested in Scale, he is a highly effective operator who has close connections across Silicon Valley. There are very few companies that have deep relationship with every top research team. There's Scale and NVIDIA boss, Jensen Huang, probably wouldn't take the job, said Dan Levine, a partner at venture capital firm Accel, who was one of the firm's first investors in Scale and remains on the company's board. Zuckerberg is hoping that Wang's star power will draw away the best talent from rivals such as OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Safe Superintelligence, SSI, to startup headed by ex-OpenAI chief scientist Ilya Sutskever. Meta is in talks to hire Dan Gross, one of SSI's co-founders, and his investing partner, Nat Friedman, remember? According to a person with knowledge of the matter, the discussion, which were first reported by The Information, are at an advanced stage, and poaching the pair would represent a coup for Meta's revamped AI division. That was June 22nd, 2025. Back to August 29th story. That's 2 months later to you liberals listening. Wang's leadership style has chafed with some, according to people familiar with the matter, who noted he does not have previous experience managing teams across a big tech corporation. One former insider said some new AI recruits have felt frustrated by the company's bureaucracy and internal competition for resources that they were promised, such as access to computing power. While TBD Labs is still relatively new, we believe it has the greatest computer research in the industry, and that will only increase, Meta said. Wang and other former Scale staffers have struggled with some of the idiosyncrasies, ways of working at Meta, according to someone familiar with the thinking. For example, having to adjust to not having revenue goals as they once did at a startup. Despite teething problems, some have celebrated the leadership shift, including the appointment of popular entrepreneur and venture capitalist Friedman as head of products and applied research, the team asked, with integrating the model into Meta's own apps. The hiring of Zhao, a top technical expert, has also been regarded as a coup by some at the Meta and in the industry who feel he has the decisiveness to propel the company's AI development. Of course, he has to be there to do that. The shakeup has partially sidelined other Meta leaders. Yan LeCun, Meta's chief AI scientist, has remained in the role but is now reporting into Wang. Ahmad Al-Dahal, who led Meta's Llama and generative AI efforts earlier in the year, has not been named as head of any teams. Cox remains chief product officer, but Wang reports directly into Zuckerberg, cutting Cox out of overseeing generative AI, an area that was previously under his purview. Meta said that Cox remains heavily involved in its broader AI efforts, including overseeing its recommendation systems. Going forward, Meta is weighing potential cuts to the AI team, one person said. In a memo shared with managers late last week, seen by the Financial Times, Meta said that it was temporarily pausing hiring across all Meta Superintelligence Labs teams, with the exception of business-critical roles. Wang's staff would evaluate request hires on a case-by-case basis, but the freeze will allow leadership to thoroughly plan our 2026 headcount growth as we work through our strategy, the memo said. AI is only as good as the people behind it. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Julie Barrett, for being my female spirit animal and helping me remember I'm not crazy and this actually happened in an American state we both loved, in a country we both love even more. It's not a state, it's a crime scene, but we love it enough, the people that is, to fight for it every day. Her with her ladies charity and me with this little show that keeps churning out voices like Julie, commercial-free and fiercely independent. Maybe we'll get her back as a hostess one day. A boy can dream. Oh, and I wore my bad dog shirt given to me by the guys at Silent Majority Foundation, friends of Julie and I, and patriots from Seattle, well, Washington, Eastern Washington. One Trump just appointed U.S. attorney being blocked by U.S. Senator Patty Murray. Lame. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. See you all next time. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God, and God bless ladies of America.
Mr. President, you'll be heading to the UK in a few weeks. Yesterday, Nigel Farage was on Capitol Hill. He really was talking a lot about pushing back on censorship online. He was asking politicians like yourself, some of the people in this room, to really push back on that. How concerning is that to you? And Mr. Zuckerberg, if you don't mind answering, how concerning is that to you, the lack of freedom of speech online in the UK?
You didn't think you'd get that question, did you? He's looking at me saying, he's saying, how did I get that question? If you'd like to answer, free speech.
Sorry, actually I wasn't paying attention. But
There seems to be a crackdown. The British government seems to be cracking down on social media posts, people being arrested for tweets, social posts. Just wondering how concerning that is to you, Mr. President, and Mr. Zuckerberg.
This is the beginning of your political career.
No, it's not.
I will just say that in terms of UK, strange things are happening over there. They are cracking down, and surprisingly so. And I've spoken to the Prime Minister, and let's see what happens. But it is a little bit different situation. I'm very surprised to see what's happening are you talking about the UK in particular, right? Yeah, I'm very surprised to see what's happening. Sad. It's not a good thing. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington. I'm a mom of 4, a wife, and an entrepreneur. And I'm pretty outspoken. I love America, and I love Jesus, and I very much value the freedom this country provides to my family and me. I've never been particularly political. In fact, I didn't even vote for the first time until I was nearly 30 years old. The 2004 election left me feeling like my vote didn't really count when I watched the Democrats count the votes until they got the result they wanted. But in 2016, I got fired up about the things I believe in and decided it was time to fight for them. In the fall of 2019, I had grown tired of getting kicked out of neighborhood Facebook groups and being called names and receiving insults anytime I voiced my opinion online. So I started my own little Facebook community where my conservative girlfriends and I could come to share information, support one another, and network and build relationships. Little did I know, this Facebook group would explode into a full-fledged movement. With the Wuhan virus shutdowns, especially in the schools, followed by riots in the late spring and all through the summer, and an intense presidential election season, the group continued to see major growth, and as of today, we're nearly 6,000 conservative ladies strong. When I created Conservative Ladies of Washington, My goal was to make a space where healthy and respectful debates were welcome and encouraged, where ladies could network to build their communities, women could share about their businesses without fear of retaliation for their political views, moms could discuss school issues or collaborate with other homeschooling parents. Together as a community, we encourage, empower, and energize one another to step out of our silence, to speak up, and to take a stand. As we grow in community together, we have the strength and courage to take necessary action needed in our state and our country for the future of America, our children, and our grandchildren. Conservative Ladies of Washington is the place for women who have felt ousted, like they don't fit in, who have felt shamed into silence. We are your people. We are your sisterhood. Our number one mission is to create in-person connections to form real relationships with each other. I guarantee you will leave your first event with several new best friends. It's truly a life-changing experience. We are just getting started, and we would love for you to join our community and become part of the movement of CLW. Become a member today. Visit our website, conservativeladiesofwa.com.
Second guess me, 'cause baby I'm the boss. Don't underestimate me, 'cause I'm the one in charge. I am smarter than you give me credit for, and I'm way stronger than I ever been before. I'm a force of nature that you can't ignore. You can't ignore, you can't ignore no more. I'm a badass woman. What's wrong with that? Can't hold me back. Yeah, I'm a badass woman. Just me.
Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance, where the river runs deep and the birds all sing.
Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Myself never get this far from the